Hi, everybody, and welcome to Observing with Webb for February of 2020, where a high school astronomy teacher tells you what you're looking at, why it's so cool, and what you should check out later this month at night. So February of 2020, it starts out slow. Okay, but it does pick up speed, especially as the dawn skies start getting crowded with some favorite planets. We have a lunar flyby of those planets. We have an occultation of Mars for some people. And we have Venus shining bright all month. And all the naked eye planets are visible at some point. So let's get started. So first off, with the moons, basically the first quarter moon is on the 1st. So starting right at the beginning, you'll see a half moon up there. The right half is lit, and it'll be visible until midnight, which means doing the observing of deep sky stuff. And, you might see some stars, but the moon will kind of shine it out a little bit with the light pollution. The full moon is on the 9th. That'll be visible all night, rising in the east and setting in the west. And then the second half of the month is when you get better astronomy skies. You've got the last quarter moon on the 15th, which means it's not up until about midnight, and it's only half lit. And then the new moon is on the 23rd. So the end of the month is when you're getting your best skies for astronomy, unless you really like the moon. Okay? So let's talk about the three events. Okay, we've got something on the 18th, we've got something on the 17th to the 20th, and then we've got the 26th to the 28th. So let's talk first about probably one of the coolest things, which is an occultation. So on the 18th, the moon will occult Mars. Now, if you watch my videos, you notice that I always have this green line on the sky. And you'll notice that the green line makes sort of an arc, moving generally east to west. And you should also notice that the planets, the moon, and the sun are on that line. That line is called the ecliptic. And what you notice is that the sun, moon, and the planets are generally on this line, and they only vary by about a degree or two. And if you look at Mars, on the morning of February 18th, okay, Mars is a little below, but so is the moon. It just so happens that Jupiter and Saturn are pretty much right on the line. Unless you zoom really far in, you see Jupiter's a little bit above the line, and you'll see that Saturn is a little bit below that line. Okay, that's the plane of our solar system, but planets aren't exactly on that plane. It's kind of like a pancake, but not perfectly flat. Okay, anyway, back to Mars and the moon. So the variation makes it uncommon, but not unusual for the moon to pass in front of a planet, okay? And that's exactly what's going to happen here. Now, we're still in Kinzers right here, okay? But if we look at the moon, ooh, nice crescent moon. Mars is really, really close by. In fact, let's center on Mars so that it'll always be right there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fast forward through the morning. And what you notice is that the moon will pass right in front of Mars. Well, now here's the problem, okay? So for us on the eastern coast of the United States, it does happen in the dawn of the morning, during twilight or whatever we call that, dawn. So it is going to be not easy. So what you're going to want to do is, if you have a tracking telescope, you want to set it up to track Mars in the morning and let it stay that way so you can just track that. Or you could track the moon, and whichever. However, I would think Mars would be best. And then what's going to happen is right around 7:30. Let's get even closer so the relative sizes are actually true. Right around 7:30 is when Mars is going to be occulted by the moon. And what you're going to see is the moon will slowly, in fact, this is real time right now, slowly eclipse it in a sense, or occult it. And so it's not going to blink out like a star, but it will. Looks like within about 20 or so seconds, it's going to be gone. And so you won't see Mars. Now, it will be tough to see for us, but it is indeed seeable. you'll need a telescope. And so the question is, well, when does it reappear? So you got to go an hour and a half later. Right around 9 o'clock, Mars will reappear on the opposite or almost opposite side of the moon. And we'll have to zoom in a little bit. It'll be on the dark side. Okay, so if we zoom in there, oh, there we go. And here it comes. It'll take about 20 seconds to pop back out. So again, for those of us on the East Coast, it's going to be tough to see, but it is technically seeable. Now you might be wondering, well, where do we have to go if we want to see the whole thing? Well, let's pause. Actually, let's go back to 7:30 when it is starting. And then what we can do is we can find where on Earth we would be able to see that, okay, at least in the dark, okay? So I am predicting that you have to go pretty much west of the Mississippi. And as you can see, I picked Chicago, and in Chicago, it's going to happen actually a little bit earlier because of perspective, but also because it is still nighttime in Chicago. So at 6 a.m. in Chicago, you see it's darker, so it should be easier to see, and you should be able to find Mars not too far from the moon. Not too far from the moon, and easy to see this event. Okay, and if you go even further west, you still should be able to see it. In fact, let me see what happens if I go to California. Well, I went to California, and it looks like the moon and Mars are not actually up yet. So somewhere between California and Chicago is a dividing line between when you can see the event and when it's below the horizon. But I'd say take a telescope out, see if you can see it. If you're west of the Mississippi, you'll have a better view. If you're out by California, you might not. So good luck with that. But anyway, that is on the 18th, the morning of the 18th. Either way, if you're out the morning of the 18th, the moon will be very, very close to Mars. And that's where I want to get into this 17th to the 20th. This is the close encounter between the moon, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, right? So this is the best week to get out there of the month in total. So what you have to do is you have to get out after 6 a.m. each morning, okay? After 6 a.m. each morning. And this is a Monday to Thursday. And just enjoy the lineup. Look to the southeast after 6 a.m., and we've got a great lineup. You've got Saturn down here. You've got a little bit brighter Jupiter up here. You've got Mars up and to the right of that. And then on the 17th, you've got the moon, a nice, beautiful crescent moon right there, hanging up and to the right of that. So you've got this nice string of objects in the sky. And so what happens is, obviously then, on the 18th, the moon is very, very close to Mars. Okay, less than a degree and just looking gorgeous right next to each other. Still worth a picture, even though it's not technically occulting at the time. And then on the 19th, get up the next morning, the moon will be right nearby Jupiter. You'll be able to see, well, you may or may not be able to see the teapot of Sagittarius, although that is a very thin crescent moon, so you might be able to catch all those stars. And then on the 20th, the moon, it'll be a very, very thin crescent, but it'll be just, I think, about 8 degrees down and to the right of Saturn. So definitely worth, less than 3 degrees down and to the left of Saturn on the 20th. So if you're into astrophotography at all, if you just want to get some good shots, if you have a DSLR camera lying around, that's the time to really get some pictures, okay? Because 3 planets, the moon, all in one spot. Let's hope for some clear skies. And so you notice that the moon is getting thinner and more crescent-y, and so it's going to move back around to be a sunset object. And so we're going to move to February 26th. We're going to change our time to around sunset, and we're going to change our direction to look west because that's where the sun is setting and that's where the action is happening here. So on the 26th to the 28th, you will have a beautiful view of the moon and Venus. Now, of course, Venus is very pretty already, but this is when the moon gets close by. So you've got the 26th. It'll be about a fist width below Venus. And then on the 27th, it is right nearby. That'll be what you see in the sky right there. About, let's see, 6 degrees to the left of Venus. And then on the following night, the 28th, you'll see them also in the same realm, but 14 degrees apart. Okay? So that's another close encounter, and that's it for the events. So don't forget, the 17th to the 20th in the morning is a great time, and then sunset that last week should be gorgeous with the moon and Venus.
Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn.
All right, so about those planets, which ones can you see and when? We've kind of already covered this, but let's get a little more into detail. First of all, the sunset planets. Right now, the only ones we can see at sunset are Venus and Mercury. Let's start off talking about Mercury right here. You might be able to catch it, but only for the first 2 weeks, because that's when it's about 10 degrees above the southwestern horizon. And basically, all you're doing is looking for a dot that is brighter than all the stars, but less bright than Venus. And what you'll notice, I'll go through the first 2 weeks, you'll notice that Mercury does get a little higher, but so does the sunrise. Okay. And it gets a little easier to see, and then, sun's coming out, and it's diving back toward the sun. Okay? So first 2 weeks is when you want to look if you're going to look for Mercury. Okay, it'll be there. And then you've got Venus. Venus, this is the best one. I was telling my astronomy club that one of the things that makes me smile is looking at Venus as the sun is setting, right? Because you have this beautiful sunset happening, and then this lonely bright star, the only thing that's off in that direction, just sort of in this sea of blue. And so what Venus does throughout the month is it ends up climbing to about 40 degrees above the west-southwest horizon. It basically, all you have to do is just look west. You don't even need that big of a horizon or clear of a horizon because it's 40 degrees, 4 fist widths at arm's length. So just get out there and check out Venus. It'll be easy. The first thing that you see, it'll be out there. Okay? And it's going to be that way for a couple months. So let's switch gears, though, because we need to talk about the morning sky, and that's going to be off more toward the east, and we got to switch over to around sunrise. So, in fact, let me go to the beginning of the month here, okay? At the beginning of the month, we have Mars and Jupiter, and Saturn is just barely peeking up there, but that's still during dawn, so it's kind of hard to see. So I'm not really counting Saturn until 2 weeks into the month. Okay, but let's talk about Mars here. Mars, you have to get out after 4:30, before sunrise, and just look to the southeast. It'll be up there. It's ruddy, it's red, it's brighter than most of the stars around it. And yeah, it's going to be between Scorpius and Sagittarius to start off the month, and then it's actually going to move. Let's see if I can move this here. It's going to move toward Sagittarius by the end of the month. Okay. Jupiter is very similar. Jupiter will trail Mars by about 25 degrees in 2 hours at the start of February, rising at around 6 a.m. And by the end of the month, it's only 10 degrees from Mars. And Mars will be above that teapot lid. Jupiter will be off the handle. And then Saturn, toward the end of the month, this is when you really get to see it. Now, here's the next thing, though. Saturn makes its appearance, known yet again. It'll have a nice season of being in the mornings, something for us to see. And it takes about 2 weeks to get in there. However, this starts Saturn's very long, slow slog to catch up to Jupiter for a winter solstice conjunction. Okay? So one of the things that I did here when I was playing around is I would center on Jupiter, okay, and I would sort of zoom in towards Saturn, okay? And I'd basically just play the year forward and notice what happens. Now, if Mars gets real close to Jupiter, on March 20th, so keep that in mind for next month. But you notice that Saturn keeps getting closer and closer and closer. Oh, here it goes, November, and then December, and then, oh, there we go, December 21st. Saturn and Jupiter, you will be able to see in a telescope both of them, both the disks of their planets, of their surfaces, in one telescope view. You can't do that with Jupiter and Saturn often at all. That is going to be the winter solstice of this year. Okay, but that's a long way down the road. Let's stop there. Just remember, you're looking at Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn in the morning, Mercury and Venus at night.
Are there patterns in our skies? Are patterns only in our eyes?
Okay, so what constellations are you going to look at now? Well, remember, after dinner, before bed, and before work. So let's start off with after dinner. After dinner, let's say it's 6:30. Oh, this is the best time because Orion and his winter companions are out. Now, Orion is pretty easy to see. All you're doing is you're looking for 3 stars that are right in a row, about equally spaced, in just about an almost perfectly straight line. And those are surrounded by an almost rectangle around it. I take a look at it and I see a bow tie, but most people see a hunter. If you haven't heard, take a look and see about Betelgeuse dimming. Don't worry about it going supernova. It does this thing, but yeah, so there's Betelgeuse. Maybe it will go supernova. I can hope, but I wouldn't bet on it. But anyway, there's Orion, and what you do is you take his belt, and what you can do is draw a line between connecting all those stars. And if you go to the right about 20 degrees, which is about 2 fist widths at arm's length, you will find Taurus the Bull, this V constellation here with the red star Aldebaran as one of its eyes. And it even connects all the way up here to these two. These would be the horns of the bull. And this is the face and the head. Now it's part of this big cluster called the Hyades. It's a big in size cluster, but there aren't too many stars there. I mean, there are more than in general, but it's not like something that's 10 degrees away, which is, if you follow that same line you made and follow about 10 degrees more, you come to the Pleiades, which is a wonderful cluster of stars. Blue, young, hot stars, just a really gorgeous view. Now, if you go back to Orion and you go the opposite direction, about 20 degrees again, you will see the brightest star in the sky. Notice it's the biggest dot on the screen. This is Sirius, the brightest star in the sky. And sometimes I can see how that gets confused for Venus. It actually has a similar color, similar brightness, or at least the way it looks and how we remember it. But that is the big dog, Canis Major. Okay. There are some other ones we could go through, but I don't want to go too in depth. Just remember Gemini and Auriga are up above those. So let's move ahead and take a look and see what could we see before bed. So let's go to, 10:30, and you should be able to see, let's see, Gemini and Auriga, maybe Cancer up there. But let's move ahead and talk about the morning right before work. Let's go ahead to 4:30 in the morning. And I think it's still a good time to check out Leo, the lion over here. You see the backward question mark with the right angled triangle to his left. You can also see the Big Dipper way up here. Follow the arc to Arcturus to find booties. And you can follow the arc to Arcturus, then speed on to Spica, the brightest star in Virgo. And that's what you'd be looking at in the morning. So with that, I think I'm going to take this much too long video to a close, and just encourage you to get out there. Don't forget to see the planets in the morning. Particularly, you want to look from the 17th to the 20th, and just check out Venus the rest of the month. Good luck if you're finding that occultation. And yeah, with that, I'd like to wish you all very clear, dark skies for the month of February.